meat over here, and then we're gonna start sauteing. And I don't know if I said it before, but this is lamb. You can use beef if you don't like lamb. Get the kind for the stew. And if you do like lamb, shoulder or actually from the shank would be really nice too. Okay, I hear my butter bubbling. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in here real quick before it starts burning. Alright, so when you're doing the one with the meat, brown your meat first and then add the onions and let it brown with the meat. But when we're doing it with no meat, we're going to brown the onions first and then we're going to add garlic and cilantro to the mix. And I'm going to crush some garlic with cilantro in it. It's going to be really, really good. I'm going to add some bones. And that's all I'm going to use since it's a small pot. I'm going to save this for another dish. And I still have a clean board. I'm going to put this here to the side. Now for the Lebanese rice, I've let it rinse in a few washes of cold water, and now it's draining. Once you've had Lebanese rice, that's all you're going to have your rice that way. It's so good with the vermicelli. And instead of water, I like to use a little bit of chicken stock. It really adds nice flavor to the dish. I'm going to test my oil, and I'm going to drop a little onion in here. And if it bubbles right around it, that means it's ready. So I'm going to put half of this in here, and I'm gonna save my other half for my meat mixture. Gonna give this a good stir. It's starting to brown. Oh, come on. And I want it to get brown just another minute or so. I'm going to add the onions to this mixture. Now, for the rice, which we're going to start in a minute, the vermicelli, they come in angel hair nests is what they call them. What you're going to do is just give it a good squeeze once we get started. And I'm going to brown it in butter as well. I'm going to use this pan for my rice, and I'm going to use about a tablespoon. Wow, all kinds of smells going on over here. Alright, while everyone gets nice and sauteed in here, I'm going to start crushing my garlic. I'm going to add my onions to this right here. Good comfort food. Add an overboard onion. And I'll pick it up. Give it a good stir. Holding it in. And I'm going to season it. And remember, my seasoning in the meat version is the 7 spices, the cinnamon, ground coriander, and salt. You want to be a little generous with the salt. I'm just going to go ahead and add all of that in here and give it a good stir. Lebanese cuisine, we use those spices predominantly the allspice or the 7 spices. Cinnamon goes pretty much in every stew or soup, just a dash. You don't want to overpower it. Okay, now can you see my butter's melted here? I'm gonna get my vermicelli nests. And you actually have to watch this because it's easy to burn. I'm using 2 to about 1.5 cups of rice, which I'm gonna add about 3 cups of chicken stock to. I want to coat this, I want to stir it and coat it with all the butter that's in here. And I'm going to brown it. Going to add a little bit more butter. Let it sit here for a second. Oh, this is smelling really good. You know, when I was a little girl, every time before any company comes over, my mother would saute onions. And it just filled the room and the house with the smell of onions that was so homey. When people walked in the door, they really felt comfortable right away. And when I got old enough to do it myself, I started doing that and carrying on the tradition. So the vermicelli is starting to brown and it can cake up a little bit, so you want to try to spread it evenly. I'm going to turn down the heat on my stew here because I got to get my garlic ready. Yeah, you constantly have to stir this just so it won't get too dark on you. Now to the okra, I'm going to add a small can of diced tomatoes. If it's tomato season, you want to use about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of tomatoes that's peeled and diced and seeded. But since it's in the winter and it's not tomato season, we're going to use canned tomatoes because they're just as good, if not better, than the tomatoes that are out now. Okay, this is starting to burn really quickly, or brown, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go grab my rice real quick, which has been soaking, or draining from the soaking. And I'm gonna add it and brown it as well, just a little bit, so it will get a little bit of the butter mixture on top. Okay, and it goes. We're going to do a little sizzling because water and hot grease, they don't like each other very much. I'm going to pull it off the heat for a second and I'm going to stir it and incorporate it and marry the vermicelli and the rice together. It smells good. I've almost put too much rice in this small pot. Okay, that's good. Now I'm gonna add my liquid. 3 cups of chicken stock, vegetable stock, or just plain water. And I'm gonna season this as well with a little salt. You have to season everything, otherwise it's gonna be bland. Now what I'm gonna do here is bring this to a boil, and once it's brought up to a boil, I'm going to lower the heat and cover it and forget about it for about 15 to 18 minutes. Now I'm neglecting my little onions here, which are nicely starting to be translucent and brown.